Mayor, would you do the pledge for us?
Of course, please stand. Flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We got Pastor Derek from the Point Church for invocation.
Probably not till the real meeting.
Okay.
No,
Would you like to say a prayer?
Yeah, but I'm just saying we're going to do the budget meeting first, and then we're going to shift. Is that correct?
No.
It's all together.
Dear Lord, thank you for all the folks that are here to care about the city. Thank you for the city staff. Thank you for these commissioners doing their homework. And we thank you so far this year. You've spared us from many hurricane threats. And we'd like to go a year without having to go through that and have a couple of years of trying to get our money back from FEMA. It's a blessing that the city management already has a plan in place with the contract to get any debris or issues that happen in the city taken care of in a timely manner and not have to wait for FEMA. We just ask you to continue to lead and guide this commission in the things that we need to make decisions on for the future of Cocoa Beach. And that's my prayer, and I pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for that detailed prayer. Roll call.
Commissioner Jackson,
Here.
Commissioner Williams,
Here.
Commissioner Willis,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hutcherson,
Here.
Mayor Caputo.
Here. Anybody want to make a motion for the agenda?
Move to approve agenda.
Got a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. I guess we'll start this budget hearing.
All right, this is the budget hearing. Item 1, approve the tentative millage rate of 6.1644 mils for fiscal year 2025. The tentative millage rate of 6.1644 mils is 8.25% higher than the rollback rate of 5.6945 mils. Adoption of the millage rate by resolution number 2024-21 is scheduled for September 19th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Staff Representative Patricia Draycott, Chief Financial Officer Wayne Caragino, City Manager.
Move to approve the tentative millage rate of 6.1644, which is what our budget is built on.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any public comment, or do we want to have a discussion?
I can start the discussion. It's just that, yes, it's an 8.25% higher than if we rolled it back, which would have meant that we got the exact same amount of money that we got last year. But healthcare costs have gone up, the competitive price of retaining city employees, including fire and police, have gone up. The price of materials has gone up, just like happened to everybody else in this city. And the city doesn't get to print money, so we're in the position where we have to, keeping the millage rate the same as it was last year. It's the first for me because I tried to do that many years sitting up here, and I got voted down, and the millage rate got raised above that, above the current millage rate. And the current millage rate is always an increase because property values went up. So we just have to live with it because we can't run the city without the additional funds.
I agree with what Commissioner Williams said. I don't think we can afford to, I mean, I want it to go higher, but since we capped it at this millage rate, I'm for it. I can't see rolling it back anymore. We need to keep our current services that all our citizens love to have, and I love to have. And we have to keep maintaining our roads, our infrastructure. We need this money to keep everything going. So I can't see going any lower than this millage rate that we have here and this budget that we have here. If we go any lower, we're gonna have to cut more things. And then that cuts into our services, because that's the things that have to go first, leisure services. And then it goes down to our roads. And I just think it's bad for the city to go any lower than we are. And that's where I stand with this budget.
Yeah, I'd like to see it come down. I'd like to see us spend a lot less money. But at the same time, I think, as Commissioner Williams said, and echoing Commissioner Willis, I went through the budget and looked at where are we spending more money? And as Commissioner Williams said, it's cost of living, right? It's our employees being able to continue to stay with the city and serve as they do. It's cost of materials, it's projects. There's just not a lot of excessive spending, right? These are cost gross, and this is challenging. The painful part for me is that we've got residents, and even more so businesses, who are not homesteaded, who then take it on the nose for the increase, especially in the ad valorem taxes, and that's tough, right? And I've heard from folks that where they're not seeing increase in their prices and being able to aggressively charge vacationers and things like that more money because people just won't pay it, it's eating into the business. And so those are tough. And hearing from folks, I understand and agree that personally as a resident, I don't want to pay more money, right? And getting the tax bill in the mail and saying, oh, this is yet another area where I'm going to be spending more money. That's hard. But at the same time, I appreciate where we're at with the commission, that the city is, and it's a shared commonwealth set of services that we need, right? So I don't have to build my own roads, so I don't have to do my own water services and treatment and things like that. And going through, I don't see where the directors of the different departments are doing inappropriate things to aggressively increase their budget. In fact, I think that there's a number of areas where we're recovering from missed opportunities to invest in our infrastructure to keep it so that we're not paying significantly more down the road for things that we could have maintained and protected. So where folks are looking at significant percentage increases across service areas, digging in and looking at it, I couldn't find the places that I was looking for to say, oh, no, let's cut this. That's clearly ineffective or unnecessary spending. So I agree with both of you commissioners that, well, I'd like to see the reductions. I can't find them. I mean, it sounds like you've got three for it. I'm always pushing for smaller government. I think there is areas to cut. I've got details on C2, but I think the rate's going to pass as is. It sounds like we've got three for it. I'd like to hear if you found
if you want to
areas.
say something,
Yeah.
I've got some thoughts myself, but
I was going to bring it up at C2, which is the details of the budget versus the rate.
Well, point of order, Mayor.
yeah.
I thought this was the final reading. But this is back to the tentative, which we already voted on before. And then the final is going to be September 19th. So the point of order would be we vote for this, and then we go to item C2 and talk about the budget. And if there's wiggle room that could bring it back down, you can reduce it at September 19th.
That'll work.
Okay. All right. Any public comment on this? Go ahead, Janice. And then I'll get you next, Dave.
Good evening. Could somebody explain, please, the formula for arriving at the tentative millage of 6.1644? It's 8.2%, 8.25% higher from the rollback rate of 5.6945. Could you please just tell me how you get to 8.25%? Because I do
Well,
old
I haven't-
math.
That increases in the property value, and if I'm incorrect,
No.
Patricia can come up.
No, the 5.69 times 8.25% should equal the 6.1644. I haven't done the math, but that's what I would assume.
Because I came up with something like, it's like 0.9%, not 8.25% increase. I just want you to correct it before you vote on
Okay.
this if it's an error, a typo or something.
Okay, yeah, I didn't check, so.
Patricia clarify.
Close 1.642.
Yeah. So, good evening, Patricia Draycott, CFO, City of Cocoa Beach. What it is the calculation is the difference between the two divided by the lower number, and that's what creates that percentage change between the rollback rate and the current rate, which is the 8.25. So you just take the 6.1644 and you subtract the 5.6945,
Right.
and then divide it by 5.6945. That is the percentage change
Right.
between the two.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Dave, go ahead.
Hi, Dave Nettis from One Yell Drive. I haven't been here in a while. Part of me says, don't go to rollback because that gives me more material for my next mailer. But if it can help the community, let me give you an idea, and I don't expect to jump on it tonight, but we have one more opportunity to go back to rollback. And I'm requesting that you go back to rollback. And I'm going to argue that you can do that without changing anything on the budget, other than the accountants would have to figure out how to account for it. The budget is based on full employment. You have $26 million payroll based on full employment. In reality, you're never at full employment. In fact, it's one of the metrics that's in the budget, and you like to be under 3%. But I would argue that oftentimes it's 5% or even more. I think you're currently probably running higher than 5%. But let's take 5% on 26 million. That's $1.3 million. That's approximately what you're giving up by going back to the rollback. So I'm just offering to you a way to look at this, knowing that, and I know that will stress the city manager because that means he has to run tightly, and I'm sure he's very capable of doing that. But we're not at full employment. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there. You guys can honestly say, I want to go to rollback, knowing that all the promises and the services and the commitments to the people and the projects will still get done. So I offer you guys that. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Dave.
Can I comment?
You may.
We know that there's always going to be turnover in the city employees. It's not going to be just because they can find a higher paying job somewhere else in the county or some other state. It's going to be because they have life change issues, family issues, need to move closer to their older parents and such. So having a gap between where we are now and full employment is the gap we always need to fill so that when those unexpected departures happen, we can still run the city. So if you capped the budget and the number of employees where we are now, and we lost some key employees due to non-wage issues, then there's a gap in those city services between being able to dismiss those employees, well, I don't mean it in a bad way, but, those offload those employees and find qualified candidates to fill the positions to continue to run the city. So it's a good point. If it was black and white, Dave, you could do it, but we always need to be able to hold the opportunity to have full employment so that when we have unexpected reductions in staff, we can still maintain the city services that the citizens and the residents and the businesses expect.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say too, part of the reason we don't have full employment, and it's been for a while now, is because our wages are not necessarily competitive with other cities for the same kind of positions. So we have a retention problem because we're not paying enough. And I think to reduce the money we have for employment more just contributes to that problem more. So I understand where that we could look at that, but that's the whole reason why we're in that situation to begin with. We don't have enough money to be competitive with other cities for those positions. So, yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
And, yeah,
If I could, we also budget with the assumption of full employment, because if you don't and you do have full employment, then you do not have the budget to cover it. In addition, if you have a long-term employee who leaves, there could be costs like PTO payout, which would take up that cost of that gap between when they leave and the new one comes on. And so sometimes there really isn't savings while you do the recruitment process, but the budget will still cover that if it happens. We don't budget for long-term employees leaving and those payouts because we don't know when people are going to leave. To the commissioner's point, we don't always know. So we budget to that full amount. Worst case it happens, you do have a gap and you have savings, and that'll drop into your reserves at the end of the year. So it's not that the city's losing out, it just shows up in a savings at the end of the year.
Thank you, Patricia.
thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, Jeremy, I have some stuff to say too, but I think it's more appropriate for the next
Yeah, I think
the
mine's
next
more-
thing. So I think I'm gonna vote on this, and then we'll go down and we'll discuss some other stuff that we might have concerns on. All right, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor to keep the millage rate the same at 6.1644? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Okay, item 2.
Okay, this is item 2, approve the proposed budget making appropriations for fiscal year 2025. Adoption of the budget by resolution number 2024-22 is scheduled for September 19th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Staff Representative Patricia Draycott, Chief Financial Officer Wayne Caragino, City Manager.
Move to approve the proposed budget making appropriations for fiscal year 2025.
All right, got a motion and a second. All right, let's discuss.
You or me? It's either way.
There's some stuff I saw in the budget that, just offhand,
Do you want to let Patricia
or
do her part first?
If you want, I can do the presentation.
what would you rather do, Patricia? It's up.
I have no preference. If you want, I have numbers.
Actually, yeah, let's see your presentation first, and then we'll go into it. That way everybody kind of understands what's going on here.
This is this is from the TRIM, the DR 420. So this is the report that comes from the Department of Revenue, State of Florida Department of Revenue. And it gives the prior year final taxable tax value, that's the assessed value that's taxable, and then the current year gross taxable value and the change in that. So that change represents 9.06, so there's an increase of 9.06. This is how it looks if you were to go with rollback. When we calculate the projected revenue or collections for the property tax, we, by state law, have to budget for only a 95% collection rate, which is what is represented by that total tax levy budgeted at 95%. There's a part of that in that middle column that gets moved to the CRA. So the net tax revenue to the general fund at rollback is $16,149,000, and at the current millage rate, it's $17,482,000. So there's an increase or difference between rollback and the current tax collections of about $1.3 million. When you look at this, this is looking at homestead properties and how does that affect your homestead property? And I'm sorry I didn't do this for the non-homesteaders that Commissioner Jackson was talking about, and I apologize for that. But when you look at that, the homesteaded properties, first of all, there's a $50,000 or a potential of $50,000 homestead exemption that comes off your taxable value. And the second component of that is there is a maximum increase of the values of 3% per year. So it doesn't really matter how much your market value changes. If you're a homestead, you cap out at 3% for the amount of additional tax value on your property. So if you had, say, a house that was taxed at $500,000, what that would represent to the homesteaded property taxpayer is an additional $185 for the year at the current millage. And I understand that that's not the full tax bill. Your tax bill, Cocoa Beach represents 20, maybe 25% of your total tax bill. The rest of it is county and the school district, but the current millage doesn't actually have a large impact overall for the annual cost. And I'm sorry this is a little small. This is the changes that have been made so far from when you looked at the budget workshop report to where we are today with this proposed document. Some of the decreases that were made from that workshop report to this prepared proposed budget. Now, one of the things that isn't showing up here that we've done subsequent to this as well is regarding the ordinance 1687, you guys voted to have the endeavor to commit additional reserves to the capital improvement fund. We don't have sufficient reserves to do the 3%, so the city manager asked us to do 1%. That represents $555,000 that has been added that I didn't show on here. So that reduces the reserves further from the general fund as we move that reserve balance to the capital improvement fund. The personnel services from 24 approved budget to the 25 proposed budget have increased by 7.4%, and that's the citywide. That includes the placeholder for the union negotiations. That's been settled now. The contracts will be coming to you for ratification later, but the placeholders were pretty accurate, so I don't see that going down much. But that's all of those costs from salaries and wages to the health insurance. It covers all of it.
Can I ask you a question on that real quick?
Absolutely.
So when we had our booklet before, it said 24% or 25. Is it, and now it's 7 point something?
The number you're talking to about represents general fund only. These numbers are looking at citywide, all funds.
No, for the personnel.
Yeah. When the 24%, I think, was general fund only. I'm not certain, Mayor, I'm sorry.
You're saying one department and averages down.
I was just asking, because we were talking about the general fund of personnel services
This is all the funds.
is 7 point something. And the 24% was what?
I think it was general fund, but I'd have to look, and I can clarify that.
And so this is this,
All funds. So that includes the enterprise fund and the stormwater fund as well.
for personnel only?
All personnel costs.
So I guess maybe I don't understand, what does general fund mean, and all fund mean for
So-
personnel?
So we have the general fund, which is the bulk of the functions that are done by the city. And the general fund is, most of the revenue that come to the general fund is through the ad valorem taxes. And it provides the services in your administration, that's me, that's city manager, HR, IT. It also covers your cost of public works, public safety, development services, and leisure services, and includes some that are called non-departmental that are citywide, such as our liability insurance costs. You also have special revenue funds, which are your CRA, and they get their funds from special sources. It's your capital improvement fund, and it's your building permits fund. Then you have your proprietary or enterprise funds, which get their revenues from user charges. So the users who receive those services pay for those charges, and that's your sewer treatment plant, your utilities fund, and your enterprise, your stormwater funds. When we talk about general fund, it's only those funds and those departments that are covered by predominantly from the tax revenues. When I'm talking about all funds, I'm talking about general fund plus the special revenue plus the enterprise.
Okay, I think there's maybe a disconnect on what we're
Say
talking
again?
about. I think there might be a disconnect on what we're talking about. So you're talking about the 25% is how much that fund increased from last year that pays into it. And then you're saying that our personnel services have cost us an extra 7 point something
Four.
percent right there. So then there's a difference of about 18% between what we're taking in and what we're paying.
No, that's just the change between the adopted fiscal year '24 budget and the proposed '25.
Okay.
That's just the change in total between the two budgets as of the proposed budget.
Okay.
Can you go back one slide?
Yep.
Janice says I have to lean toward my mic or people can't hear me. So on the capital outlay, it shows a reduction of 8.6%, like millions of dollars there. Can you kind of go through that and explain it, or do we need help, or? Because it looks like you guys did some homework there.
That's the change from last year, that's the change.
Not, just because they got removed from the 2025 budget does not mean that they're capital costs that have just gone away. They've just been moved out to outlying years. So it was a combination of some public works. Lost my glasses, there we go.
Well, all I'm kind of saying is that was pretty good sharpening your pencils.
So one of the big costs was $800,000. That was for the financial software package. That got moved out to a future year. We've moved out some of the fleet. We pared down the fleet budget to really just those items that were already committed, as well as the replacement vehicles for the police. One of the things that also changed from there is we have a squad car and a dump truck that are actually in this year's budget. We re-budgeted because the build won't be completed till next year. We pulled that out. We'll bring it to you as a carry forward. But it's just been a lot of, effort on the behalf of your departments, just looking at what do they feel that they really have to have for fiscal year '25, and what can they really push out and defer to future years. And I can put together that information and send it out to all of you, exactly what those cuts were. But there was quite a few that were made.
So I just want to, in case somebody caught that, like we're not replacing our police vehicles. There are 7 new SUV police vehicles, marked police vehicles in the budget. There's 2 that are unmarked. And then there's just one canine vehicle. So there are still replacement vehicles for the police
Yep, we've
In the
left
bu-
those in.
in the budget. And then there's 2 trucks planned for current and out years for the fire department that are the 4-door trucks.
Another large one that we moved out was the tennis court renovation. That was 820. We moved out the marina, which was 450.
Patricia, I have a question. The budget workshop, we were still 2 million unbalanced, though, correct? You had to take 2 million out just to balance it, and then this is additional cuts, so that's that 80%.
We're still using reserves to balance the budget. Revenues in general are down and costs are up.
You can go to the next slide.
Sorry. Operating is up. It's professional services, it's utilities. FPL is going up by about 8%, cocoa is 5%, our solid waste is 5.5%. Capital, we've decreased, it's just overall looking at what we can move to future years. Well, I guess we're done. No, it's fine. But the other slides showed, I don't know what happened, but the other slides showed where we were with reserves. Just to recap, the reserve balance looks at, for the general fund, we have to have we calculate 19% of your personnel, operating, and debt service. That goes to the disaster recovery. It is restricted, committed by City Commission. This year, for the fiscal year 2025 budget, the other non-specified committed reserves increased from 1% to 2%. For all of the other funds except the capital improvement fund, best practices recommend that you have a minimum of 2 months of reserves representing a total of your operating costs, so divided by 12 times 2 months. And with the capital improvement fund, you have a $500,000 that went in this year, and the $555 that's in the budget to go into that fund for next year. So your reserve balance in that fund will be just a little over $1 million. With the general fund, we are still balancing the budget. Even with the cuts, we are still using reserves to balance the budget. And outside of cutting almost all of the general fund capital and reducing services, that is how it's going to be for this year.
So that reserve cut, is that, I mean, that's the legally minimum we can hold, or, I mean, it seems like a pretty significant Hawks, and it's correct, and I've got it in my briefing. It looks like a pretty significant drop from 23 to 25.
Yes.
Is that-
We need, the calculation is just a little under 9 million for the minimum requirement for your general fund, and I believe the last number we looked at was right around 13 million is our projected ending reserve balance. Go down one more, slide 10, there we go. So the current projection is the 13 million in the projected reserve balance for the general fund. Of that, the 19% is just under 7 million is the requirement. For the 2%, that's just over 700, which leaves, which means that you have to have a minimum of just under 7.8 million to be in legal requirement for your general fund reserve balance. And we are currently at the 13 million with the budget as it is in the proposed. For your CRA fund, their 2-month reserve requirement would be 162. For the building department, they should have 137. The capital improvement fund, that 1.1 million is the 1,055,000 that went in from this year and is projected to go in for next year to those committed reserves. The remainder of that is just investment earnings that are on the current funds that are in that account for the bicentennial and city hall construction.
That 1% you were referring to is on top of this, or is that buried somewhere in there?
No, that 1% is 555,000. So that's coming out of the general fund reserves because it shows as an expense on the general fund side, and then it shows as a revenue into the capital improvement side, dropping into the reserve balance.
So it's in the 7.7 number on the right.
No, it's in the 13 million.
Yeah.
Well, it's showing as coming out of the expenses, so it's dropping your reserve balance. Otherwise, your reserve balance would have been 13.7. Utility service, your utility systems fund, he's asking to increase one of the projects by a little bit of money, so he may not end the fiscal year with that full 2-month reserve, but it's only going to be off by about 100,000 if he goes forward with no other savings, which typically he does have. The stormwater fund is projected to have a negative ending reserve balance, and that's a reflection of the number of years that fund didn't have any increase in the user rates. The commissioners voted to increase those rates, 2 of the 3 that were recommended, and so hopefully that will address some of this issue. I don't think it's going to address all of it. Even if it does, it won't address the need to go forward with the remaining projects that have been sort of scheduled and planned for that fund. What the stormwater fund has is just a grant-funded project, and then there's the vulnerability study, which we have to complete before we're going to be eligible for most of those grants. We have to be sort of moving forward with this because we can be failing to comply with state requirements on water quality if we do not. So we really need to keep focused on that and making sure that we're getting the user fees necessary to cover those costs. But the state requires that if you go into a negative reserve balance in 1 year, you have to have a plan for recovery in the upcoming year, which we do have. Our stormwater manager has a plan in place, and that's that utility rate study that was completed and approved by the commission to implement those rate increases. So that is the plan to address that. The healthcare fund is just moving the costs of the healthcare into this special revenue fund. It's an internal service fund. So all of those costs that go for the healthcare get moved into this fund, and then we pay out to the vendors directly. And it's just so that we can track exactly what's costing us. clearly without it kind of blending into each of those different levels. So what you're looking at there is the total cost of healthcare for all funds.
Question, if we don't use all the personnel, like we said, we budget for at least all of our personnel, and then say we don't use that whole budget for the whole year, will then that extra funds, will that be going back into the general reserve fund?
Yeah.
Okay,
So if we spent less, that projected reserve balance will actually be higher.
okay, thank you.
Or conversely, if we generated more revenue than we're projecting, that reserve balance will go up.
Okay.
Tricia, do we know in, say, the last 3 years, how we've tracked in terms of expenditure associated with personal costs, in terms of uses of funds? Are we actually expending all of the money that we're setting aside for salary in the odds and ends that you mentioned, or are we ending up with more and rolling it over?
We usually, yes, not necessarily in personnel, but sometimes, and sometimes in operating, sometimes in capital. We can project what a project is going to cost, and then we can come in under budget, and that then will drop into reserves. All we can do at this point is to estimate based on what we know today and what we look back on historically to plan for the future. Sometimes we come out ahead. The costs don't cost as much as we're projecting they're going to be, and sometimes, unfortunately, they cost more. And we can't predict what the economy is going to do. So, for example, with the investment interest, we had a great year. I didn't budget for revenues to be as high as they were because I had to look where we were at the time we were budgeting. For this year, I'm still not budgeting as high as it might be because you don't know. And if the feds cut the rates again, that's going to drop. So with the revenues, we never want to budget what we hope we're going to get. We budget what we think we are actually going to get. And the same is true with your expenditures. We have to budget based on not what we want to budget for, but what we think it's really going to cost. And we always encourage our staff, every single director is encouraging staff, find the best price, go out there. We require by our purchasing policy to get 3 quotes. Find out, are you getting the best price? Go with the best price. So they're always trying to come in under budget. It's every day, every month, they're trying to come in under budget.
And Patricia, I believe that we went over this, and I believe it's the same. I didn't notice a difference, but last year we were at 36 million in debt, and this year we're projected for 33 million in debt.
33, 34, right.
So even though we're using reserves, we're still, this will be the 3rd year in a row that we've dropped from 44 down to 40, down to 36, and then now this next year to 33 million.
We just added 4 with the city hall. That's what the city hall for.
That's
That
even,
includes the
even
additional
with
debt
City Hall.
payment for City Hall.
so we are paying down debt at this point with the current way that we're going through with this. So it's not like, we're just adding to the debt. I mean, in the future, we're probably gonna have projects that will, right? There's a fire station that wants to be built and stuff like that, which, again, I think we can still push it off a little bit, but.
Yeah, that was another part of that large capital outlay that went down was the fire
Right.
station, which was 5 million.
So just keep in mind, even though, it seems like some of this stuff is higher than it should be, we are still moving in the right direction when it comes to debt as well, which I know that, kind of makes it a point for your rollback, but in my opinion, the more debt we can pay, the better off we are for our future generations.
Patricia, you want to go through the rest of your slides?
I think that was the last one.
Okay, I have a question then.
Yep.
Too bad for you. So, on the General Employees Pension Board, and we know that we're gonna have people retire. We already have current payout to employees. And we know we have an actuarial rate, I think it's like 7.5% that we're hoping to get every year out of the market. And we've done pretty good the last few years. But, just hypothetically, the downside of a bad year, how does that affect our budget overall?
If you look at the pension contributions, they've gone up, especially for police and fire, for this fiscal year 2025 budget. And that's because the city's contribution is based on the actuarial report. The actuarial looks at a rolling 3-year. So for this year, we have fiscal year 21, 22, and 23. They were all bad years. So the contribution this year is higher as a result. But for next year's contributions, that'll drop significantly from this year, because for next year, when they do that calculation, that really bad year of 2021, when the feds had the interest rate at 0, that one will drop off that average. And this year, the 2024, which was a really good year, will be on. So that percentage of the contribution will go down for 2026, but for 2025, it's very high.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question. If we have a bad year in the market, okay, a negative year in the market, we still owe all our pensioners the amount of money that we promised them,
Yes.
okay? How would a bad year in the market affect, like, even if it was 2025's budget?
That's
Come
what
out of
I'm,
reserves?
well, it doesn't come out of reserves per se, but it is a budgeted expense. It's part of that personnel cost. So it's one of the drivers that's driving the personnel costs up. There's an increase in the pension. Because
And I'm saying, if you have a negative year where you're not getting as much money into the fund, you're just saying that that doesn't matter because you're taking money out of that fund, whatever the balance is, and making those payments on the pensioners, and then we just have to worry about the future having enough money to pay the pensioners.
So the state of Florida has very specific statutes on how the pension has to be handled. So that's why we have to use the actuarial's percentage contribution. And what the actuarials do is they look based on what's happened to how much is required to keep the account fully funded, is the term they use. But they look out for 100 years when they make that calculation. So that fully funded is always changing every single year, what that number means and what that percentage that we have to contribute means. So when there's a bad year, it can mean that the city's contribution goes up. The employee's contribution stays exactly the same. It's 5% of wages. So every employee contributes 5% of their wages. But with those contributions and with what happens in the market and with what the actuarials estimate is required is how they come up with the percentage that the city has to contribute that goes in addition to.
So what you're saying is based on the numbers we're talking about, that's kind of a separate issue. It's a separate fund. And if there was a fluctuation in the markets, then that fund would change, but it wouldn't be like an immediate effect on a future city budget. And now we got to replenish money to be able to pay out pensions.
We do it every year. But it's over a 3-year smoothing. So even if you've got a bad year like 2021, it's only going to have negative repercussions on our costs for a short period of time, and then it drops.
What I'm trying to get at, it's a separate pile of money than what you're planning, you're running the city budget on.
It is a cost. It is a cost in the personnel budget. When you look at your personnel costs, that pension contribution shows up in there.
Well, the
It's a
contribution's
benefit.
in there, but the negative effect of the market is not in there because you don't, it's not, it's unknown.
Correct. Each year, I don't know what the next year is going to be. I know what I have to do for this year, and that's based on that
But I mean,
actuarial
there's
report.
$33 million in the general employee pension.
Yes,
Okay, it's way more than enough to pay next year's and the next 5 years'
yes,
pensions. And there's money going into it every year.
yes.
So it really doesn't affect the day-to-day, year-to-year operations of the city.
There's not a lot of
Until it starts going
fluctuation.
broke, and then we would have to deal with it.
Well, we have to consider, we have to have it fully funded, right? I mean, that's a
Yes,
state,
it is
that's a
state
state
law.
law, that we have to have
Right,
it fully
we have to
funded.
pay into it every year, but if there was bad years in the market, and that 33 million went to 28 million, it's
Our
like,
payment goes up. Her budget goes up.
only if it doesn't balance.
It goes up.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes up. So we see that effect in this year's budget. And then, because it went up, that pension contribution went up for the 2025 over the 2024 contribution. But in 2026, it will go down.
It's just a line item expense. It doesn't draw from reserve necessarily. It's just
Not
another
necessarily,
cost.
it's just part of the
Okay,
benefits.
I'm sorry I went into all that. Please excuse me, audience.
Jeremy,
Whatever
you,
done,
you've got some stuff.
Say again?
you did it.
I will tailor my pitch, seeing the temperature, so if you want me to index forward. Karen, or- So my biggest concern, so I'm looking at this graph here, Patricia, one last question. I don't know if these numbers don't line, this graph looks like reserves got depleted to under 10, but you're saying they're at 20? So I don't know if. this
13.
graph-
13.
13.
13,
Well, this is all funds, so it should be that 20 million number, right? I don't know, this is what the basis of this entire pitch is from. I don't know if that was off.
I'll check.
This looks like reserves took a huge hit from like 20 down to under 10. But I'm reading the numbers now.
It's not that big of a change from 24 to 25, but we are using reserve
Okay.
balance, we are using reserves to balance.
And that, part of that was due to the City Hall project.
Yes, so approximately 3.5, just under 3 million has come out of reserves for City Hall construction.
Okay.
So we were looking at around 5 million. That went up to 5.5 when we took the 500 out to move to the Capitol. So of that, 3 million was from just using reserves for the City Hall.
Now, just correct me if I'm wrong, we have the potential to put that back in if these, some of these projects like the West End or the Westgate projects come in and they pay in their fees to go into that one fund, I guess?
Yes and no. So the permitting fees that come from those projects go into a special revenue fund. That's your building permits and inspection utilization
Right.
fund. And that is very strictly regimented by the state of Florida, how those funds can be spent. They are not available in general to the general fund purposes.
Okay, because originally we had planned for our general fund to be, or that fund to be at a greater price, which is why we had to go to the reserves.
So the original projection for contributions towards construction from the building permits fund was 2.6 million.
Right.
In working with our Development Services Director, Randy Stevenson, who's responsible for that fund, we cannot get that close to that number, not
Right.
even, no matter how hard we try, we cannot justify that in any kind of logical mythology whatsoever. We have to be able to substantiate our mythology for those calculations if an auditor from the state were to audit that. And We have estimated about $748,000 as the contribution from that building permit fund, and I cannot see any way to calculate a
I
higher
guess
number.
what I'm getting at is, the previous city manager had pledged that money in that fund, and that's the reason why now we had to take it out of general fund. So that's the reason why that depleted as much as it did, and it was just it was something from previous administration that we had to take care of.
We had overstated revenue, is
Yes.
my understanding. Last year's revenue was significantly overstated.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I put these together, I mean, we're working as a commission, so I'm trying to highlight things as talking points. This is not necessarily my recommendations, but I think at least something we can talk to. So bottom line up front, it looks like we've accelerated or added a good bit of CIP. So I was a little bit thrown off when we said we deferred stuff. It looked like there was quite a bit. So there's about 10 charts in here that are all the items that have been added since the 24 CIP. I think that's a needle mover. It looks like there's about $1 million, that equates to about $1.5 million. We talked about the millage rollback, 1.5, just to level set. So it's not like it's this unachievable number. It's about a 1.5, it looks like, from the refined numbers. It's actually closer to 1.3.
You're kind of going too fast for me, Jeremy. Can you maybe,
Can you read?
yeah, I can't, because I can't see it.
So
But
that,
okay.
Oh, you don't have your glasses?
No.
borrowing from Josh.
I'm sorry. All right, go ahead. I'll try
The
to.
reserve fund, it's interesting. I was going, you'll see the next chart is the graph. It looks like it's about 8 million. So I don't know if it's just a graphical misrepresentation. Sounds like that number's closer to 30, that we've retained that, because that was my biggest concern of, we've historically flickered right around 30 million in reserves, and it looked like we dropped below 10. And then if we do any budget cuts, doesn't sound like it's going to be a millage reduction, but it would obviously just roll to the reserve fund increase. So as it's written now, I'm not going to vote for it. I didn't vote for the millage. But again, I want to have these as talking points so we can get discussion going. I won't go into minutia like Commissioner Williams has asked not to. So here's the screenshot here. I mean, I look at that, I'm not a finance guy, but look at that, it's like, wow, we're outspending, the red bar is exceeding our revenue. So we're deficit spending, and then we're depleting our reserve. So I just want to make sure that's sustainable. I pulled a couple of benchmarks from Satellite Beach. Their budget, they chopped at 16%. They had a nominal millage reduction of .131. Indian Harbor had a similar budget change. And then Cocoa Beach, we've got a zero millage change, but a 23% up in our budget. So food for thought there. Similar sized cities, Canaveral doesn't have their draft budget out yet, but I would have pulled their numbers as well. So this was the first alarm that went off. It's like, wait a minute, this is not sustainable. I didn't expect you to see that, but the screenshot on the left is the capital plan for 25 that we're approving in this budget. On the right, tucked in the corner, is the budget from 24, the capital plan. So I want to get us to a position as a city as we're accountable to holding to that 5-year look ahead. So when I see numbers, I'll call them out. On the left side, page G15 in your book, if you want to get it, it's a $46 million capital expenditure for 25. In the 24 CIP plan, we said we were going to spend $34 million in 25. So we've upped that $12 million. So we've accelerated $12 million of revenue or capital plans into 25. Again, not necessarily a non-starter, but if there's things that, in a situation where we're deficit spending, if we're accelerating capital plans, we probably should reconsider that. Is there a way to push those out? Again, the next 8 or 9 charts are all of those, and I'll walk through the format, and I won't go through each line item, so it won't be a death by PowerPoint. But basically, this is every single line item that was not in the 24 capital plan to be spent in 25 that's now in the 25 capital plan. So the rows across the right-hand side is what was approved in 24. So let's just take the parking kiosk. It's a $15,000 ad. I know it's not a needle mover, but it was nowhere in the 24 plan. So we've now placed that into the 24 capital plan. I just want to make sure we all agree that that's something critical we need to bump up to be priority 1. If it was never on the radar to be spent anywhere in the 5-year look ahead, we've now placed it. That means, to me, it's a high priority to get done. Just go through each one of these. At the bottom, another format, the radios. I wasn't quite clear if that was carry forward from last year or that's new scope. So that XL95 radio, it's a 57K this year. Was that 171K last year expended and this is new scope? Or is that just carry forward because it didn't get executed last year? I wasn't clear on that. But again, the message is here, if it's critical to get accelerated back into a plan that was never in the 5-year plan, to me, that means it's the highest priority capital. Any questions on this before we go forward, Mayor or Commissioners?
I just touch on
Oh.
the parking kiosk.
Yeah,
I mean, when you look at the amount of revenue we
Yeah.
get from parking.
yeah,
Updating the parking kiosk so we can continue to get that revenue is
100%.
basically a nit.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to include this is everything that
Yeah,
was not in the
okay.
plan. That was my scrub through. And
Yeah,
it was
okay.
not time consuming, but
Yeah,
I
mean,
wanted to throw it out
things-
there.
We're in a beach environment and you know,
100%.
you gotta replace stuff.
Yeah. But at the same time, I also want to start getting to where we have an accurate 5-year look ahead that I understand there's going to be flicker as we go throughout the year and execute our city. I'll touch on a couple of, so the one here that looks like new scope, the diesel removal for Fire Station 50, I didn't know if that was, we wanted to do that. We talked about not doing the Fire Station 50. So I don't know if we wanted to add to that or if that was going to get demoed. It's in the plan now. So do we want to spend that in knowing that we're going to demolish that fire station in a year potentially? Again, we won't go through, this is all accessible, but the bottom line is that green box on the left, that's the roll-up. But my point with all this is I'm trying to illustrate, I think there's opportunities. That's exactly why I didn't vote for the millage, because I think if we want to vote as a commission, there are areas we could either eliminate or defer some of these items. And then, again, it's the entire budget. I put the page number on there, so if these are in public record and you want to retrieve them. But it's commissioned, so for example, on the bottom of this, that sums up to $298K. This prior one was $828K, so you can see there are some needle mover ideas that if we want to challenge that, I think we certainly could replan some of this capital. That's all the CIP stuff. Let's continue CIP.
I mean, my thought on it, Jeremy, is rather than cut to bring the millage rate down, I would rather cut to bring the reserves up.
That's what I
So,
was saying on the front is, and it's not even necessarily cut, it's just a replan.
Right.
Does it have to be done in '25?
I mean,
Because back to my original chart, it looks like there's a pretty significant surge in '25 of 46 million, but then it drops off pretty heavily. We're less than half of that in
and
year
some of these projects too, you know, I haven't delved like really deep into what exactly all these projects are, but some stuff, we know that it could cost, you know, another 10% more next year if we do defer it and stuff like that. So there's give and takes to deferring projects or putting it in reserves. So, you know, we're guaranteed maybe, or at this point, close to 4 to 5%, you know, interest on our reserves. So, you know, you've got that too. If there's a cost increase, at least you made it with your reserve interest increase. But, you know,
I'm just cautious if we're spending stuff we've accelerated into '25, it means it's priority. And in
Yeah.
order to accomplish that, we're depleting reserves. So one point on that thread though, we had a significant amount that we didn't finish last year. That rolled into the budget this year, right? Funds forwarded. Are we committing to do scope that we can't accomplish in '25? You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
we're throwing on another $46 million of capital on top of, I believe it was 19.
And isn't a lot of that some grant fund spending too?
Understand that.
That increase in capital projects, isn't that grant type projects as well?
Yeah, so for general fund, of that, 11.7 million is grant funded. Of your capital improvement fund, there's 9.5 million in there. 3.9 of that is the city hall construction that's remaining, that's debt proceeds. And 3.4 million, that's your bicentennial park, it's grant proceeds. On your
Is that grant
Utilities?
revenues in here, though?
Grant revenues. So you pull those projects, you lose the grant.
I understand, but the grant revenues in this,
That's in that spending,
Absolutely.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
why it went up, because we've got grants.
Of the 16 million in the utilities fund, 8.27 of that is grant funded. And in the stormwater fund, almost all of hers is grant funded, about $1 million. So yes, the capital has gone up in cost from the prior year to this year, but also so is your grant revenue. They've been working very diligently to find and apply for grants. We have an employee who is really focusing on identifying grants and working with the departments to get as much grant funding as we can to support these projects.
Could we say, I mean, I don't know, because I haven't looked, but could we say that the grant funding that we're getting pretty much offsets the difference in the spending?
In a large component of that capital, yes. I mean, you have one of the largest capital items in your general fund is the muck capping. It's $10 million. So when you look at your total general fund capital, it's very large, but 10 million of that is your muck capping. If you chose not to do that project, you would forfeit the grant funds.
I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting we don't do those. I was just expecting if the grant is in the revenue, I wouldn't see us still exceeding our revenue. You see what I'm saying? They would both increase, the revenue as well as expenditure.
Jerry, let me tell you. I went through this years ago. Government budgeting, and you do government budgeting, but, and I do government budgeting. It's not the same as household budgeting. You know, the Gatsby, everything else in the world, the numbers don't always seem to add up. But what I would, based on your analysis here, what I would ask is that if we look at last year's 2025, 2020, the 5-year plan, and we look at what they pulled into 25, how does that affect those out years numbers? And they drop way off. So we're spending more now, but we're gonna owe more later, owe less later. That's a good thing, don't you think?
It depends. I mean, that's what I'm saying, is do we want to deplete, that's at the risk of depleting reserves, at the cost of depleting reserves.
Okay. Any other comment from, are you done?
The last one is adding in, we had a holiday boat ramp. I thought that was in there, and it looks like we stripped that out. I think, I would like to see that put back in, holiday boat ramp
Make
renovation.
an amendment to add the $75,000 for the Holiday Lane boat ramp into the 2025 budget as part of this approval of the proposed budget, and ask Patricia to figure out a way to fit that in.
Okay.
I'm looking for a second.
Second.
All right. So are we gonna vote on that to amend it, or we're just gonna add it to the?
I think that was him amending his motion
Okay,
that we're
okay,
discussing.
okay, got it. All right. Are you done, Jeremy? You got more? Okay.
Just a quick question.
I can see where this is going, so yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Just the number going
Hutcherson,
up.
where you were showing the delta between revenue and expenditure, did that include roll forward, or was that absent roll forward in terms of that delta we saw from revenue to expenditure?
I'm gonna let her answer, because it doesn't add up, it sounds like.
Because I know we have funds that don't get expended that move forward year to year. And I'm,
My
I
understanding.
appreciate what you're showing. I just wasn't sure if the funds forward was in the
I want Patricia to
considered. What was the funds forward from last year to this year? Just to, because I agree with you, if we're way outspending our revenue, we're gonna put ourselves in a world of hurt real quick. But if the roll forward
The roll forward
addresses
is,
the delta in what we're seeing
This has
there.
the 19 million in funds forward, correct?
yeah, and that's always a changing number. At some point, very soon, the end of this week, we'll kind of finalize that. But keep in mind, when I'm finalizing that, it's based on actuals only through today. So you've got almost an entire 45 to 60 days of revenues coming in or costs going out that don't get reflected in that because we haven't finished the year.
But the funds forward is in the bar that we see for total revenues.
No,
It is not?
No.
Okay.
that's just showing the reserves, the revenues, and the expenditures. The revenues plus the funds forward is your total sources of funds, and your reserves and your expenditures are total uses of funds. What this is showing is just revenue, just expenditures, and then a separate line for reserves, so it doesn't actually show the funds forward in there at all.
That's that government math.
Yes.
So it's another 19 on top of that.
Another 19 added to the total revenues bar? Is that what you're saying? That was the 19 you just mentioned?
I'm gonna see the answer.
I don't think you're gonna resolve it right now, Josh.
Because that's just revenues and expenditures, and the revenues, it's not sources and uses.
Okay.
Yeah.
We all good on the commission? Okay, public comment? Anybody? Yeah, actually, yeah, go ahead, Janice. You can go first.
Janice Scott, wow, those are some generalities up there, a lot of money. I'm really disappointed that the golf course was taken out of an enterprise fund so that we can never see exactly when the golf course was created and all of that. It was quite contentious here in the city. The commission voted to the residents that they would have an enterprise fund so that we could see revenue and expenses, and it wouldn't be always in the dark robbing the general fund. So I see that even the pond over there, what was that thing Vice Mayor had on his slide, $95,000 for the things floating in the pond there. So I have some other comments that have to do with goals of the different departments every year. I think Mr. McLean would remember, he's the only employee still standing from those days when every department head had to submit a report to the manager, and the manager would generalize that report and to make it into a general monthly report, and the employees and the manager, everybody could see what the goals are, what we've done, what goals we didn't accomplish, and what we're going to do going forward. I would like to see that being considered again in the future so that maybe we could have a better understanding of what's going on in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Yeah.
John Lose, 444 Dempsey Drive. Just a couple thoughts I have, watching the presentation is, one of the reasons our budget is going up, on the operating side, we said it's going up 14.6% fiscal year 25 from 24, 14.6% operating. And that has a multitude of components in it: healthcare, professional services, labor costs. I mean, it's all in there. And we made the case that we need more money for operating because all these services have inflated. So we all understand that because that's the world we live in. But the point I want to take that to is that the city has many, many fee-based services. We charge fees for things, and it's a long list of things. We have to make that same case to the users of these services that, hey, our costs are going up 14.6%. So the users of these services we've got to pay. And it's my thought, I can't prove it to you standing here, but it's my thought that we're increasing our budget 14.6% because everybody's charging us, but we have to make sure to charge everybody else. because our costs are going up, just like they're telling us our costs are going up, our costs are going up too. So I don't think our fee-based services are keeping up with the inflation rate. The stormwater is a perfect example of that, but there's other examples, but the stormwater is a perfect example of that. So we have to be careful about that. The other thing with fee-based services, the fee theoretically doesn't only cover your operating and maintenance costs each year, not only O&M, but it's supposed to cover future capital. So if you're charging a fee and you're not even covering the O&M, you're definitely not covering capital if there is such a thing under that particular fee service. So we have to try to move all these fee structures to cover O, M, and capital. And I don't think we're doing that across the board. The other thing is we're still using reserves to cover the budget shortfall. And I would say that's a no-fly. You can't do that. If the simulation we're running or the draft budget we've presented draws down the reserves to cover the shortfalls, then that's a failed simulation. That simulation doesn't work. So I don't think that's a good idea to do that. I think didn't the commission also pass an ordinance, or maybe it was non-binding? I'm not sure if it was binding or non-binding, but we're supposed to increase the reserves 1% per year. So we're not doing that if we're drawing it down just to balance the books. So we have like a little conflict there. The final comment is, I don't think the budget shortfall, there's not like a line item you can go to a line item and say, this line item is causing us problems. Let's focus on this line item. This looks, just to me as an observer, this looks like a larger issue. This is a structural problem. There's not one line item we can drill down on. This is a very large problem across all departments. I think we have a structural problem here. I don't want taxes to go up just like everybody else doesn't want them to go up, but I also don't think we can put a budget forward that has structural problems in it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other public comment? Yeah, yes, sir.
Scott Cunningham, 2100 North Atlantic Avenue, Unit 806. I just want to follow up with my thoughts on John's comments also. And you mentioned the 5-year plan. There was once a very good 5-year plan that had City Hall all budgeted out. And then we had real life happen. We had 2 calendar years, which was really, I think, effectively 3 fiscal years impacted by heavy storms. And you didn't have the reserves to cover that. So the city reserves got drained down, and those capital plans got moved. Now, whether you like the current City Hall or you didn't, the old City Hall was derelict. And it got that way because in all the previous years, that capital improvement was delayed. And the reserves we talked about, and I think I was part of the encouragement of setting aside and committing to reserves, not goals, but commitments to prevent that from happening again. Because you either want to have your capital and have it maintained and functioning, or you're going to create a situation like the golf course where you're now spending capital funds to rectify ignored maintenance problems for decades. You can't save and spend at the same time. And as far as the tax rate goes, I don't know anybody sitting in your position or in the employee's position who have been exempted from the inflation and the costs going up. So, I don't like my taxes going up. I don't like gasoline prices going up. I don't like milk prices going up. But I have no choice. And I don't think the city is exempted from the same kind of pressures. I want my police force to be armed and adequate. I want my fire department to have the resources to respond. I want the services, and I think the rest of the citizens do, but we have to pay for them. And I don't think micromanaging the professionals that we have, recommending to you what they need to run the city, can be chipped away at nickel and dime. I think the city was set up to have a strong city manager and a goal-focused, policy-focused council. I would like to see the council do that and the city government perform. That's the way it was set up. And let's not make the same mistakes we made in the past.
Thank you, sir. All good points. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Rick Anderson, 1800 Minuteman Causeway, and the thing I hope that we all agree on is that it's just unacceptable to be drawing down reserve funds to balance a budget in a non-crisis year. This is not a fiscal crisis year. This is not a depression that we're in. So this is just an ordinary year, and we're drawing down reserve funds. Now, the commission has made a stand that they don't want to increase the revenues by way of the millage rate. But somehow we need to fill that shortfall, and I agree with my friend John Most that I hope that we very soon and very aggressively look at the user fees to cover the shortfalls in the areas that we're subsidizing.
Thank you. And we are actually looking into increasing user fees for certain stuff, so.
Point on that, Mayor. It's interesting because I asked one of those questions. We're actually forecasting less revenue from parking. So I think between rates going up, it may have the opposite effect. Between 22, we've raised rates and we're now down to 1.4 instead of 1.7 in terms of revenue forecast. So we may be over the optimal price point. So
Yeah, I don't think
that's a big.
I don't think raising parking rates is the
I'm just saying from a revenue forecasting side.
But I think there's also, we have some users that we have never raised rates. For example, I think the port, for example, we're at the same rates that we were, I think it was 20 years ago. So I think we're looking into that as well for getting our stormwater and all that stuff back up to par in I'm trying to say, we're looking at getting those rates back up to par. So, we're looking to try to get all this stuff and get our rates back in order so that we aren't being taken advantage of as a city. Any other public comments? Yes. State your name and address, please.
Len Beckett, 1503 Minuteman Causeway. I concur with the gentleman who said that there's a systemic problem. I think your spending level could be reduced by 20% if somebody was minding the store just a bit better. It is my opinion that what the city is purchasing in many cases is being overcharged for it, number one. And on the other side of that, we all know how the budget process works. Staff says, we want this because this is our Christmas wish list. The way it's supposed to work is our elected officials are supposed to say to them, no, that's unreasonable. You need to come back to us with something that's a little bit more reasonable. You're supposed to be the ones telling them no. We, the citizens, our responsibilities are supposed to be the ones telling you all to cool it. That's not been happening. Not been happening at all in this city since I moved here. I'll give you an example. In the previous meeting I spoke at, $2.4 million is budgeted for golf course irrigation. So if you decide you want a 6-inch pipe and you need let's say 6 miles, which I think is an overestimate, that would require 170 sprinkler heads at $170 apiece. To do the entire golf course for the material alone would only be $300,000. Where's the rest of it going to? Now, I had a neighbor who was a backhoe operator. His job was to lay pipe. He retired as a backhoe operator laying pipe. A good backhoe operator, according to him, should be able to lay a mile of pipe a day. How much labor should we get for the balance of $2.4 million? What I'm saying here is we have a problem in that we have departments who are taking the lazy way out of sourcing these prices and contracts. They're not doing the homework. I also wonder how many other things are being done that way, the lazy way out. I am sure that if somebody were to be paying attention to the store, this budget could be reduced by 20% and not cut any services, just by figuring out whether we're paying a fair price or not. That's my opinion. But what we need, and let me just ask a question, and if, may I continue?
If you keep it quick.
Okay. So I decided to do a public records request. What I asked for was a general ledger transaction report. What I got was a trial balance and a general ledger summary, and I only got the summary through May. What I was looking for was an individual transaction report. And I don't know if anybody knows what it is, but what it is it itemizes everything that was posted to the general ledger. Here are some samples if you'd like. It says who bought it, where it was bought from, what date it was done, what general ledger account it was posted to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that I could get an idea of what the cost we were paying as a city on certain items were. What I got was a trial balance and a journal summary.
Okay.
Have any of you, no, I'm asking you, have any of you looked at a transaction report? Then how can anybody talk finances without understanding where the money goes item by item? It might have been a 65-page report. And I know that you're all but volunteers, but your job is to look at how the money's being spent, and that's what I'm asking for.
65 pages.
Skip. This is not
Our
our,
CFO tracks those ledger accounts on a daily basis with her staff, okay? I don't track them, she tracks them. The city manager doesn't track them, he oversees her tracking. And she
I
is a
rest my
very
case.
competent CFO.
I rest my case, sir.
this is not a back and forth.
I rest my case.
So, sir, I understand your concerns, and I do agree with you on some of your points. I think we could do better. We actually, me and the city manager have talked about looking into certain transactions and better spending like that. So, thank you. Next, public comment.
Call the question.
All right. We've got a motion and a second with the amendment. All in favor?
Of the amendment?
With the amendment, yes?
No, you say that you vote on the amendment first, right?
You do vote on the amendment first.
Okay, we vote on the amendment that he proposed. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion
Let's
pa-
vote on the main motion.
Okay. Let's vote on the main motion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. All right. City Attorney.
Okay, this is the city attorney report.
See,
Oh, special presentations, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Okay, first is the proclamation National Suicide Prevention Month. Kelly Haskins, accepting on behalf of Space Coast Health Foundation.
all right, I've got a special proclamation here I'm going to read. Whereas September is designated as National Suicide Prevention Month and recognized by the National Association of Mental Illness, and whereas many health officials and community leaders locally, state, and nationally understand that mental illness is a significant issue of concern, particularly among our youth, and whereas we realize that to address the mental health issues requires more open and honest discussions about mental health. And whereas one major hurdle is removing the stigma attached to mental health treatment and discussion. And whereas individuals, businesses, organizations, public officials, and many others recognize the importance of emotional health, and now therefore be it resolved that the City of Cocoa Beach supports efforts on the Space Coast to provide education and resources for mental health problems, and be it further resolved that the City of Cocoa Beach will encourage a positive effort to encourage those with mental health issues to seek help of family members, friends, colleagues, and/or licensed mental health professionals to assist them in times of need. Adopted by members of the City of Cocoa Beach on September 4th, 2024. Yes. And Representative Jill Forbes, would you like to get your,
Kelly Haskins.
what was that?
Kelly Haskins.
Oh, Kelly, sorry. Kelly, would you like to take your proclamation, and if you want to say any words, you're more than welcome.
Hi, I'm Kelly Haskins. This is Beth Beal. We are here representing our nonprofit called Do It for Hunter. We started this a couple of years ago, actually not a couple, like a year and a half ago maybe, in honor of my son who we lost. He was a high school senior. Actually, he had just started college at UCF. We lost him out of the blue. Best friends with her son, but we felt the need to do something, to make sure people are aware of the 988 number, make sure people are talking about it. It is a tough topic to talk about. But it's happening around us. People don't talk about it, and that's one thing that we do need. So this proclamation is very important. Thank you, Wayne, and Space Coast Health Foundation for putting this together and to help our community be aware of the resources that are available to anybody, to talk, to call 988, to seek out resources and seek out tools for your children to use. So if they do have a panic attack and something happens, that they know what to do. We do have an event coming up in a couple of weeks called You Matter Day. It's coming up in Merritt Island, September 21st from 10 till 2, happening at Merritt Island High School. This will be our 3rd annual event, just to bring the community together and to make sure they know what the resources are. And it's just a positive event with great messages and resources available for not just the kids, but for adults too. So you all are invited, and I hope you come. It's September 21st at Merritt Island High School from 10 till 2. So thank you.
Thank you. And we can get another picture afterwards if you stick around.
Don't make yourself do that.
But I'm not going to make you do that. All right. And we also have another speaker on vacation rentals and ordinances, Representative Jill Forbes.
since I retired. Which one is the one to the right? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Probably everybody's watching social media. They talk about it all the time, but in the past year, I've had 3 Airbnbs, vacation rentals open near my house. I live at 945 South Atlantic on the beach, and it hasn't been the most pleasant experience. So what I did was a little bit of research, and I found that there seems to be some non-enforcement of the city ordinance on some of these larger Airbnbs in the community. So the 3 relative items to this is that the ordinance for vacation rentals in the city is that there's a total of 8 occupants per vacation rental. And with that is 4 vehicles at these locations. The city ordinance also says that there has to be information readily displayed to the maximum amount of occupants and the number of vehicles. I know you're all giggling about now. So the result of the city non-enforcement is vacation rental owners and their agents routinely and do rent to more than 8 occupants. Typically, when there's more 8 occupants, there's more than 4 vehicles. Over-occupancy of vacation rentals puts undue stress on full-time homeowners and residents who reside adjacent to or nearby vacation rentals, including but not limited to vehicles improperly parked on streets, sidewalks, lawns, anywhere. Noise complaints. Littering. I've seen things where they're doing unsightly things off of people's docks. I know the other day I was sitting at my kitchen table and a gentleman walked in front of my house and proceeded to do in the dunes and then walked back by the vacation rental. Trespassing. This goes on all the time, all up through the dunes, in the waterways, the Thousand Islands. You know, it's not been pleasant for a lot of us that live here all the time. So what I did was, on August the 1st, I just took a random selection of what was being sold for maximum occupancy on the website. So I just randomly punched in to Airbnb, VRBO, Staylux, or one of them, and I said, I want a house for 10 or more people. Oh, whoa, all sorts of them pop up, which is over the maximum of 8, right then and there. And then I went, public record, I pulled up the address on the city website on permitting, and I can see, lo and behold, only 8 are allowed. So as an example, I hope this person's not here maybe, but if they are, there's 132 East Park Lane. It's up kind of near the pier, and the vacation rental website says 14. There is a picture of the city Cocoa Beach vacation rental certificate on the website, and that the agent and homeowner has signed to is occupancy of 8. So what do they rent it for? They rent it for 14. They rent it for 12. 6 cars, 8 cars show up, right? So again, I just did a random sample. This is just as of August the 1st. I did work with Danielle in code enforcement. 3 of the homes that are on this list have been reduced to 8. She sent out citations. But this gives you an idea of, one of them's just around the corner here from the fire station, 16 plus on the website of a house with like 4 bedrooms. And if you look through the pictures, there's bunks in where the dining rooms are. There's not even sufficient parking for 4 cars. And you know they all show up. So this gives you an idea But like I said, if you put in 10 plus 10 on Airbnb or VRBO, loads of homes show up. So based upon what my random selection that I did, many of the vacation rentals are in violation. And these are the ones that are not grandfathered prior to March of 2020. These are all post-March 2020. Rental owners and their agents are blatantly advertising and renting for more than the occupancy rate. And of course, like I said, you get 8 or more people, you have more cars than that. Next door to us, we counted one day, there were 12 cars that were parked on the sidewalk. It was a mess. The amount that can be fined is $500. There are some regulations, as you know, that the state of Florida has kind of lumped in on the cities. We can't stop the vacation rentals, but I believe we can do some ordinances and things, but a $500 fine for some of these corporations that are doing the vacation rentals is nothing to them. They pay the fine and on they go. So they just keep doing it. What I'd like to recommend here is 5 items. Is the city needs to perform an annual or random audit on the vacation rentals, comparing the occupancy listed on the selling, and very often they're on multiple sites, the same property. And then looking at what the registration is with the city, which is 8. And then for identified violations, you know, maybe I'm being too nice, they could get immediately the $500 citation. I'm saying, hey, send out the letter, you got to reduce your count right now, and otherwise, you know, then we'll go on to citations. But once it's reduced, my opinion is they should cancel any of the future bookings, because they were now not allowed to have more than 8 to begin with, and they're booking 14 and 16 in these houses. So, you know, if after the notification, go ahead, issue the citation, and then there is no section in the ordinance for repeat offenders when they're over occupant. There only is for the noise ordinance. So what I'm saying is, hey, you're a repeat offender, you keep having these parties and all these things, hey, 3 times, you know, you lose your rental capability for a year. I think that's what the noise ordinance is. So, and then I think going forward, when they apply for the registration, they need to show proof to the city that they're only doing it for 8 occupants and 4 vehicles. When I went online to look at the registration, there's supposed to be a spot there where the rental agent or the owner provides where these cars are going to be parked, but I can't. There was nothing there on any of them that I saw. Are they supposed to be parked at the beach crossover? Are they supposed to be parked up at Laurie Wilson? Where are these, you know, on the side streets like Esther? Where do these cars park for the extra? They clearly don't have room in the driveways. I drove around the other day to look, but anyhow, that's the end, and thank you for your time. But it hasn't been pleasant for me living next to the vacation rentals or across the street. So,
Thank you. I like it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Forbes, thank you for putting a very detailed presentation together. I don't think there's anybody in this room that disagrees with the vast majority of what you presented, okay? We actually, and city manager can correct me if I'm wrong, we had to hire an extra code enforcement officer just to deal with vacation rentals. And that's been ramping up. it takes some time, to try to look through 1,200, Airbnb or vacation rental type properties, sorry about the Airbnb thing, to find out, all that data that you've looked up. And then it takes time for a code enforcement officer to deal with each individual situation and make sure that their website is correct and that they have their parking plan there and all that. I do agree that we as a commission should consider revising the ordinance for increased fines for repeat offenders, kind of like what we have for the noise ordinance. So $500 first fine, $1,000 second fine, maybe, I don't know, if 3 strikes you're out, or you could, I don't know what the state regulations are. Becky could tell me, how high can you go on those fines? We fine them every day, but, like I said, the majority of the people in this room would agree with everything you said, pretty much.
Yeah, if I may, where do residents and homeowners call when there's too many cars and it's out of control? Is it the non-emergency number?
Emergency.
Like if I see the house next door, who's only supposed to have 8 occupancy, and there's clearly 20 people there, do I call the non-emergency number at 10 o'clock at night? Or I don't think it's clear to the residents, and I think it would be a really good thing to have to know.
Okay, that's a slippery slope because, I have one right behind my house, okay? So they may have 4 people that are actually gonna spend the night there, okay? But it may be for somebody in those 4 people's birthday, and then they bring in 20 people for a birthday party that night, and they park everywhere, but they're not the ones that are required to park per the parking plan because they're visitors, like if you had a birthday party at your house, okay? So it makes it tough to call up and say, hey, there's 20 people over in the house, across from me's backyard, and it's only rated for 8, go do something. And they go there and find out it's a birthday party, or it's a,
Yeah, but according to the ordinance, if there's 20 cars there, or 10 cars, they're still supposed to provide only 4 spots and provide something for off-site.
As long as the 4 people that are
No, I get
actually
that.
staying there
Yes.
are parked in the driveway, then they're legal.
Okay. We're gonna,
It's a tough one, but definitely get the websites cleaned up and give the code enforcement people and the city management a chance to work that out. It's gonna take some time.
we're gonna move forward, but I agree with your recommendations. I think if they are advertising more than a maximum of 8, they're, not only are they absolutely out of compliance because they are trying to get more than that, but it's not fair to the other Airbnbers that are trying to play it by the rules because they're going to be getting the bulk of the business because they're advertising that they can do something that the others can't. So I think what you proposed could probably actually be done in a day of just looking on the Airbnb website and the VRBO website, taking a list of what those are, and then sending them all letters, like you said, to do your thing. I agree with you. I think this is something that we
I mean,
can.
I'm trying to be nice. I was a business person and all that, but I just think it's gotten out of hand.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you for your time, and I will work with the city myself to try to make sure that we get all this in place, or I guess, and Randy, if you want to say anything.
I don't think it's gonna happen that day.
But
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioner Randy Stevenson, Director of Development Services. Just real briefly, I appreciate people bringing this to our attention. Believe me, we are well aware of it. We have 1 full-time code enforcement officer and one part-time code enforcement officer. Just to give you an idea of the problem, I'm just talking about RS1 right now. We currently have identified 297 separate units. 160 9 of those are registered. 111 are undergoing various there are various positions in the process. Some of them have been to the magistrate, some of them are been cited, some of them we have a legal process that we have to go through. I can assure you, though, we're getting out somewhere between 12 to 15 letters a month. That's about what we can handle right now going through the process. I would totally agree with Ms. Forbes that we had a situation 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, 16 cars and 40 people. It was a party. And that disrupts single-family neighborhoods. We understand that, but I want this commission to be assured that your staff is working on this and they're pursuing this at the biggest rate we can. We've had several contentious cases, Becky, I would say, at the magistrate where fines have exceeded those. We do have fines in place. Those fines were put into place by a lot of calculations because we can't really make a profit. We have to be able to justify those fines. Just so you'll know, though, we had a 58% compliance rate on single family in May. We're now up to 63%, so we are headed in the right direction. Through citizens observing and reporting to us, as well as the software we're using, we think we are getting most of those at least in the bucket. The rate at which we can address those depends on what the workload will allow, because remember, we've got to cite them, we've got to wait some time, we've got to, there are a lot of legal hoops we have to hop through. If we process them all the way to the magistrate, we have to make sure we have a case against them. And yes, this is for parking outside of the parking plan. A lot of them are over occupancy. We understand that, and we are trying to address that to the greatest extent possible. Just to give you an idea, it's not just us. The fire department's done about 300 inspections since this fiscal year. That was as of the end of August, so we've got another month to go. So the fire department's involved in this with us as well. Pursuant to the commission's direction, we are in the process of writing additional code to expand not only the BTR, but the registration of short-term rentals to the RM1 and the RM2 districts. Right now, it's just the RS1. So we are going to be expanding that, which will add to this workload. And we're also working with the city attorney right now to put some language in place that would greatly simplify the process of over-occupancy. If we find out at any sites they're advertising for 14, that in itself, Becky, and you'll help me with this, that in itself is proof enough to take these things to the magistrate. So we're trying to shorten that process as well, because we understand it's frustrating for everybody, especially if you have them near you. Yeah. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. I just wanted to provide you with a couple of pieces of information there about what we are doing.
Sure. So her first thing, basically it seems pretty straightforward and easy. Just pull up an Airbnb or a VRBO website, type in Cocoa Beach, property that will fit up to 9 people. All of those ones that pop up should instantly be written down, and so that's something that.
And again, we're processing that anywhere from 12 to 15 letters a month.
Okay.
Again, I said 297 RS1s. If you look at all of them, it's approaching 1,600. So I know when we go to RM1, RM2, we will add to that 297 number, and that's increased by 30 since May, just in the RS1.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right. Any public comments about items that are not on the agenda?
Janice Scott, Cocoa Beach. Well, I really support any improvements to make the vacation rentals in the single-family neighborhoods in particular more livable for us. And thank you, Commissioner Williams, for responding to the public comments about that, and the director of the building department as well. I keep hearing about only one code enforcement person, but now we have 2, so we will be able to take care of that. Some of those places in the neighborhoods also don't hire a good landscaper that will put the trash, the landscaping debris in the container, because they don't want to, I guess, have somebody come back and put the container away. but I think that needs to be enforced too, because I don't think our contract with Waste Management says that their job is to clean up everybody's front yard. Last but not least, September 28th, Cocoa Beach Library, 10 a.m., the political forum of this election cycle. 6 people are running for the city commission, and I hope you will all come. It's open to the public. That's 10 a.m. Saturday, September 28th at the Cocoa Beach Library.
Thank you, Janice. Any other public comment about items not on the agenda?
Tim Tumulty, Cocoa Beach. Thank you, Jill. That was a very good presentation. I just looked it up, Airbnbs, or actually short-term rentals, and it was over 700 short-term rentals in Cocoa Beach. That's just one, Google search, but I guarantee there's a couple thousand in Cocoa Beach. One or 1.5, people trying to handle that is not realistic. I was actually on the commission when we adopted this ordinance a couple years ago, and I was under the impression that it was going to come back to us after a short term to adjust for these things. Like we didn't see that happening. We were more concerned about noise than we were about, hey, the actual number of people and finding in that capacity. And on another side note from the previous meeting, I just would like for the commissioners, the new commissioners, I know, Skip, you've been on this for quite a while, and you made a statement during that meeting that this is not your home budget. The city budget is not your home budget. And you need to understand the differences. And the fact that if we got down to a zero debt, which would be great if you're on your home budget, right? Zero debt, start making more money, got more money in the bank, you can go on vacations, do other things like that. That's wonderful. But for Cocoa Beach, then what you're saying is, okay, all of us right now are paying for everything for the next 20 and 30 years, rather than those folks for the next 20 and 30 years actually paying for it. There needs to be debt for that reason. I don't know if y'all understand that, and if it's really set in, but I don't want to pay for all of the debt for the next 30 years. It needs to be paid over the next 30 years by the people that are living here in 30 years from now. Because it may or may not be me, because, I'm getting up in age, right, Skip? I mean, we're right there, right? So it's got to move forward in that direction. And I would appreciate y'all looking into it and having that point of view, looking at it from that point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I don't think the goal is to get to zero debt. I think the goal is to be responsible with our money. Any other public comment? All right. Staff reports.
Nothing this evening, Mayor.
City Attorney.
I just wanted to mention that I have drafted an ordinance, and I've sent it to Randy and his group with regard to misleading advertising. And that will be another tool that we'll have in our toolbox, and that is a very effective way of ramping down the number of people. I drafted an ordinance like that in City of Anna Maria, and it was very impactful there. So you'll be getting that within the next couple weeks, month.
Thank you.
That's all I've got.
All right. City Commission. Any reports or announcements? All right. Sure.
For anybody that thought they missed the annual NKF Labor Day surf contest at the pier, as of, I think it was last year or the year before, they decided to move it in October because it was so dang hot, and it was usually pretty darn flat. unless we had a hurricane, which there was a couple of years that they actually had to cancel because of, 15-foot surf. But anyway, it's, fortunately, they didn't have it this past weekend. There wasn't much for surf. Maybe if you paddled real hard with a longboard, you could have caught a little bit of short break. But it's October 12th through the 14th at the pier. So the NKS Rich Stalick Memorial Surf Contest. Urge anybody to support that organization.
I'll be surfing that for sure. I wanted to mention the Kiwanis is putting on the Masquerade Ball this September 7th. So if you guys want to support a good cause, they raise money for charities and all stuff like that. I've volunteered myself as well as the First Lady to be auctioned off, and also some in the fire and the police as well. So it'll be a fun time. Don't let me just sit there without any bids.
Crush your ego.
Okay, that's all I got to say about that. Consent agenda.
Okay, this is the consent agenda. Item 1, approve the August 15 City Commission minutes, staff representative, City Clerk's Office. Item 2, adopt Resolution 2024-20, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Cocoa Beach, Florida, revising utility deposits for sewer, garbage, stormwater, and reuse services and providing for an effective date. Staff representative, Patricia Draycott, Chief Financial Officer, Brad Calzo, Water Rec Director. Item 3, request to approve amendments to the Community Development Block Grant Policy. Staff representative, Devin Talley, Director of Grants and Special Projects. Item 4, approve fiscal year 2025 liquid sodium hypochlorite bulk supply piggyback agreement on Bay County contract bid number 22-27 for Odyssey Manufacturing Company to supply wastewater treatment plant at a price of $1.65 per gallon. Staff representative Brad Calzo, Water Rec Director. Item 5, request permission to contract with firms for the wrecker service and storage RFQ. Staff representative Devin Talley, Director of Grants and Special Projects. Item 6, approve a 1-year memorandum of understanding, MOU, between the City of Cocoa Beach and the City of Cape Canaveral to share the cost of the School Resource Officer, SRO, assigned to Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High School for the 2024-2025 school year. Staff representative Patricia Draycott, Chief Financial Officer, Wes Mullins, Police Chief. Item 7, cancellation of Gray Robinson Lobbying Services contract. Staff representative Devin Talley, Director of Grants and Special Projects.
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Unfinished business.
Okay, this is unfinished business. Item 1, adopt the second reading of ordinance 1692, an ordinance of the City of Cocoa Beach, Florida, amending section 1-8, general penalty, continuing violation, adjudging fines and imprisonments of chapter 1, general provisions, and section 5-49.1, penalty for violation of Article 3B, oceanfront buildings restriction line and seawall line of Chapter 5, beaches, fills, boats, and waterways, in Section 26-7, illegally parked motor vehicles in a towaway zone, removing storage, restoration of Article 1 in general of Chapter 26, traffic of the Cocoa Beach Code of Ordinances, updating penalty provisions for violations of the city code and eliminating all outdated references to municipal judges from the city code, and providing for codification, conflict, severability, and effective date. Ordinance 1692 is an administrative ordinance removing municipal judges and municipal courts from those ordinances. The first reading was held on August 15th, 2024. Staff representative Becky Vos, City Attorney Randy Stevenson, Director of Development Services.
Move to adopt ordinance 1692 on second reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Okay.
Well, we have public comment.
Yeah. Do we have any public comment on this? All right, roll call.
Commissioner Jackson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hutcherson,
Aye.
Mayor Kapisi.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, we're at new business now.
Yes, new business.
Okay, item 1, approve ordinance 1693 on first reading. An ordinance of the City of Cocoa Beach, Florida, amending City of Cocoa Beach Code of Ordinances, Section 15-17, restrictions on camping, and Section 30-29, classes of violations and associated civil penalties, providing for findings and intent, prohibiting overnight public camping and sleeping, providing for exceptions to the prohibition, providing for enforcement of Section 15-17, providing general cleanup changes, and providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date. This ordinance is to prevent potential conflicts with the county or the new state law, Section 125.0231 Florida statutes. It's recommended that the City Commission adopt by ordinance a prohibition of public camping or sleeping. Adopting a zero-tolerance policy for camping or sleeping on municipal property will head off any potential costs associated with potential litigation from citizens or business owners negatively impacted by camping or sleeping on city property. Staff Representative Becky Vos, City Attorney.
Move to approve ordinance 1693 on first reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any public comment on this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, item 2, authorize CK Contractors, a continuing service contractor with the city, to replace the 8-inch sewer gravity main from the corner of First Street North and Atlantic Avenue to the northern property line of 101 North Atlantic Avenue. The work will be done in conjunction with the FDOT drainage project and 101 North Atlantic stormwater utility upgrades. Total price will be $69,744. This is not a budgeted item. Contingency funds will be used to cover expenses, and the current fund account balance is $145,197.96. Staff Representative Brad Calzo, Water Rec Director.
Move to approve as read.
Second.
You got a motion and a second. Any public comment?
I'd just like to say one thing, because we were talking budgets earlier.
Yeah.
Is Brad, first of all, stellar and, getting grants and taking care of business and everything. Water reclamation, but, he's admitting it wasn't a budgeted item, which requires a little bit of contingency funds to come out of his funds,
But that's
which he
what
can
it's for.
afford.
Right.
So he made the right decision, and instead of this just getting kind of swept under the carpet, like, I got the money, I'm gonna do it, he brings it to our attention, so we're aware of it, cut and dry. And thanks for doing that, Brad. And I support it.
Any other commission comments on that?
I appreciate you noting that. That's good. And Brad works incredibly hard and effectively.
All right. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment?
Yeah, we already did. Nobody.
Sorry.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Let's see, next.
That's it.
That was it? Oh, okay, yeah, there we go. All right, let's adjourn.